To say a warm welcome to everyone. This is the first webinar Swecare is hosting after vacations, but we had 2 sessions on markets and China in the spring. So this is the third one that we decided to have after the summer. And there has been quite a big interest in this webinar, so I understand that there is a great interest and there are exciting things going on in China. But of course, we also see some problems that not necessarily have to do with just the Chinese market, but of course the pandemic and the situation, the war in Ukraine and other geopolitical aspects affect the world economy. So with this, I would like to introduce Peter Botsma, who will have the first presentation on Hainan, the free trade port. So Peter, go ahead.
Okay, let me share my. Okay, is it clear now?
Yes, that looks good.
Okay, Boao Lecheng was in fact established by the State Council in 2013. But in the beginning, there was not really too much going on in Lecheng. But when President Xi visited Lecheng and also Hainan Free Trade Port, I think things really got into, let's say, emotion. And at that time, during his speech, he made a very important statement about health, because he said people's feeling of improvement, happiness, and security cannot separate it from health. And that he really announced that the health industry should really be vigorously developed. And I think that is something which made the, let's say, the health industry really in motion. When we're talking about Boao Lecheng pilot zone, you see here a map of the pilot zone. Let's say the hospitals which I'm talking about later on, they are mostly located in the bottom part, and you see the river, which is the Wanshan River. So mostly it's south of the Wanshan River, the development. But also on the other side of the river, there is land available for future development. If you look very closely, you can see that there's one main road, it's called Kanxiang Road. And on both sides of this road are now 20 completed hospitals, and there are still around 10 or 13 under construction. So it's really booming now in Boao Lecheng. If we talk about the specialties in the hospitals, they don't really differ very much from hospitals elsewhere. But what is important to realize is that Lecheng can use the latest medical devices and drugs, and I'll explain later how they can be entered into Boao Lecheng. But now you can see here that oncology is an important thing, rare diseases. Also, the traditional Chinese medicine is it's very popular with Chinese patients, and some other places where, very fancy names, but anyway, patients can be treated there with the most innovative products. How it is done is via the model 1+X. And 1 is the hospital in Boao Lecheng, and X is a supporting hospital or associated hospital that can be in Chinese mainland, but it can also be an international hospital. For example, there's cooperation, for example, with the Singapore hospital group, but also local from Chinese mainland. For example, Wenzhou Hospital. Wenzhou is a major city in the middle of China, and is one of the top 3 eye hospitals in China. And they have a very fancy setup in Boao Lecheng, which is very popular with patients, and a lot of patients coming there. And also the physicians, they are attending there, so they live at Boao Lecheng. But also in other way, for example, if you see the cardiology and oncology, that physicians from important hospitals in Chinese mainland, like in Beijing or in Shanghai, they come over to Lecheng and then do the treatment there, because the products may only be used in Boao Lecheng. For example, since December, the Jiao Tong University, which is a well-known and very respected university in Shanghai. They have an associated hospital, which is called the Region Hospital. And that is the first public hospital which opened in Boao Lecheng. And that's an important development because in general, a bit contrary to other countries, public hospitals are in general rated higher and better in quality than the private hospitals in China. So for Boao Lecheng, the fact that a public hospital opened the doors in Lecheng is an important development. Now here you can see a few of these hospitals. One exception is a little bit the Boao Yiling Life Care Center. They have a different model for operation. They work with members, so you can become a member, and then you can book time in this life care center. And the time can be, for example, for doing just wellness, massage and treatments, or you can be treated by traditional Chinese medicine, orthopedics, and also cosmetology is also a very important part. And because they have members, it has an occupancy rate of about 100% continuously. So it's really a very, let's say, successful model. The other hospitals, for example, our super hospital is quite well known for its cardiology and ophthalmology departments. The newest medical devices and also drugs are being introduced there and used by professors from Chinese mainland. Then the International Hospital, also cosmetology and endocrinology. The Ximing Boao International Hospital, they do assisted reproduction, so for women who have a difficulty of getting pregnant. And then Boao Evergrande International Hospital, which mainly focuses on oncology, and in the past had a cooperation with Massachusetts Brigham and Brigham Hospital. What are we talking about when we talk about Boao Lecheng hospitals? First, some background. There has been a study that from 2000 to 2016, internationally around 430 innovative drugs were approved internationally in countries other than China, but only about 100 in China. And that really set people to think. And so they decided that something should be done about it. And basically two things. One is that Chinese population would also need to have access to all these drugs which are already approved internationally in other countries, and also to achieve that the costs are similar to, for example, in the United States, but also, for example, in Europe or Japan. So that is the main objective at that time, which was established. And it made that in Boao Lecheng, one can have the access to the latest medical services. It can be done by foreign medical experts. They normally, if you apply as a foreign medical expert for a license, you get a license for 1 year, but in Boao Lecheng, you can have a license for 3 years, and that's the exception to Chinese mainland. And also for medical institutions to import these drugs and medical devices from overseas. But the big condition is that it should be approved by FDA or have a CE mark or PDMA, that's a Japanese license, and that they are not approved yet by the National Medical Product Administration. So it's not by the Beijing branch of the product administrations. And then patients, that is a rule which is more and more relaxed. In the beginning, patients really should take every drug or whatever in Boao Lecheng, but gradually this policy is a little bit relaxed now, and that people can also take home reasonable amount of drugs, which made let's say the life for patients easier, because otherwise they just had to stay in Boao Lecheng only for using the drugs. Now this gives an overview. I will be going a little bit more in detail after this slide about the introduction of the new medical products. It starts with finding doctors or medical institutions which want to use this product. And in general, the major international companies which I mentioned earlier, they already have well-established relations. So they don't have too much trouble in finding doctors and institutions. But as I understand that the audience is also primarily small and medium-sized companies. So I think that's very important to have a connection somewhere in China for these companies to connect with these institutions for introducing the drug, because basically the medical institution is the important link to introduce the product. They have to do the paperwork. They have to do the application with the Hainan Medical Product Administration. Now they have to prepare a dossier, an institutional review board approval, and then the provincial meeting. And one other important thing is that the products are being purchased by a logistics agent. So the hospitals don't buy the products themselves. They need to involve logistics agents, and I'll describe it a little bit more in detail later on. And then because of this real-world data use, real-world data are data which you can deduct from patient files, health insurance claim, self-reporting of data by patients, and if you can use those data, then you can submit them to the National Health Commission and the National Medical Product Administration to obtain approval. And but when you want to do that, you have to have a protocol which prior to use of this product, which is approved by the NMPA, by the National Medical Product Administration. Now here you see it a little bit more in detail in the schedule. So left is the medical company. They plan to introduce a medical product. Then they find Boao Medical Institute. So the company signs an agreement with the institute directly, or it can also be done via a logistics agent. So that makes sometimes life a little bit easier. Then the international medical company, they should provide the documents, and these documents can be, for example, let's say, which has been used to get FDA approval or to have the European Commission, the CE mark. And of course, they have to be translated in Chinese, but anyway, those documents can be used for submission. And then the medical institute, they submit the documents in the e-tracking system so that it can start being reviewed by the Hainan Health Commission, because the Hainan Health Commission and the Hainan Medical Product Administration, they have the authority to approve these products, given that they are approved by FDA, NMPA, by FDA, PDMA, or the CE mark. But if they have that approval, then the Hainan Health Commission, together with the Medical Product Administration from Hainan, they can approve the product for the first use. You see 3 working days, 7 working days. Now, maybe it's a little bit more, but it's a relatively short period. And then the approval goes by lot. So if you have subsequent lots of the same product, then you don't need to go anymore to the Hainan Health Commission or the Medical Product Administration. Then you can have it approved by the Boao Lecheng. Boao Lecheng has an administration, more or less like a municipality of the place. And the Department for Medical Product Administration, they can approve subsequent lots. And they have a deadline of around 5 working days. Maybe it's a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but anyway. Then biological products, they need to be inspected and also for quarantine. For non-biological products, there's no need for that. And then here comes now the logistics agent. They can stock in and stock out. And for example, stock out is that they procure the products and then also make sure the custom clearance and so on, and then delivers the product to the medical institute. But also prior to approval of the product, they can already in advance procure the product and store it in their bonded warehouse. So they call it at Boao Lecheng not patients waiting for the drug, but drugs waiting for the patient. So, but they can only be released, of course, after approval of the product. And but it's an interesting concept that they can already procure the products, and as soon as it is approved, then they can be distributed, which you can see in the last block. This is the situation as per January 1. In the meantime, it's around 25, 26 additional products have been approved. It gives a bit of an overview between the various specialties. It's about 2/3 medical devices and 1/3 of drugs. Let me see. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say about this one. Then there are also some recent, but let's say the latest developments. One is the real-world data use, and I think that is one of the most important features of Boao Lecheng. As I mentioned before, real-world data like data from patient files, health insurance claims, self-reported data, observational data, they can be used, and especially in a time where a lot of major pharmaceutical companies really concentrate on medical devices or drugs which are targeted at a relatively small group. And if you want to do, let's say, a real stage 3 trial, it's very complicated to realize and also very costly. And so if you want to use real-world data, you have to develop a protocol which has to be approved by the National Medical Product Administration prior to use. Because if you use the data, let's say randomly, then they will not approve. So you have to really discuss prior to starting using the product with the NMPA in Beijing. And they also have people in Boao Lecheng. And then the approval can be relatively quick. For example, this product, the first one, it took 5 months for the product to be approved. And people with experience in China, they know that sometimes it can be 3, 4, 5 years before a product can be approved. So in that sense, Boao Lecheng is a very interesting option for trying to introduce drugs to Chinese mainland. When the drugs are introduced, there's a digital platform where they follow what is going on with the drug, which hospital uses the drug or medical device, and also part of the information which is stored in this e-tracking system is and will be used and can be used for in the protocol for the approval of the NMPA. Having drugs available in a hospital is one thing, but the issue is that if people cannot afford them, if they cannot pay for that, then it is no use. So in 2020, they started the first global special drug insurance. It was first only aimed at patients from Hainan itself, and it had about 100 drugs, special medicines from international companies and 25 from domestic companies. And the premium per year is 29 yuan, so that is a really very minor sum. It's about not even 4 euros. And the maximum reimbursement is about 1 million. So that's a very interesting insurance. But what happened after that is that other insurance institutions and organizations in China, they linked on to this. For example, Beijing, you can buy a package for about 200 or 300 RMB, which is also not a very big thing, like 30, 40 euros. And then you have also access to the drugs which are being used in Boao Lecheng. The packages are sometimes different. For example, Beijing can say, okay, we only insure these and these products, and other provinces, they also hang on to this system, but they can also do, let's say, reinsure different drugs. But in general, and the interesting thing is that there is this insurance, and people can, from Chinese mainland, they can go to Hainan and then get this reimbursed. Also, the hospital, which I earlier mentioned, the Region Hospital, which is associated with the Jiao Tong University in Shanghai, they are the first dedicated research hospital. And currently, they are mainly focused on real-world data. So together with the Boao administration, Boao Lecheng administration, and the National Medical Product Administration, they developed the protocols for drugs to be used there, so that when they are submitted to the National Medical Product Administration, that the process is also relatively smoothly, and also that they can use the information for developing additional products, also additional protocols. So, but that's something which is relatively young, because it started in December, and before it really started up, that it took a couple of months. Now, this is an overview of all the medical companies, which, let's say, the major medical companies, which already have a cooperation together with Boao Lecheng. You see all the major companies here, like Pfizer, Merck, Boston Scientific is very close, but also Japanese, like Takeda, local one like Beijing. So there's quite a few of these companies, a very close relation together with Boao Lecheng. And this concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Peter. Yeah, quite interesting developments in Hainan, in Boao Lecheng. So now, Peter Ølby and Noam, should we go back to Noam, or what is the best order for us now?
I think I should jump back and take over.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So please, we're happy to have you on board now, Noam, after some initial problems.
Yeah, I go on open share tray, I assume.
Yes.
Okay. Do you see my presentation?
Yet. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. No, I think it might not. If you want to send it to me quickly.
I have sent it to you, Anna, already, so you should have received it from my email.
I have your Peter Ølby.
Okay, I think I got it now.
Okay. Yes, it seems. Yep.
You got it?
Yeah. It's still not in presentation mode, but sometimes it jumps to that. Otherwise, we can just go like this, so we don't waste more time.
Okay. I apologize for the technical difficulties here, but I'll try to make my presentation as quick and smooth as possible.
Yeah, because now we have like 30 minutes for the two of you.
Yeah. But I'll try to be relatively quick. But again, my name is Norm David Stern. I'm from Copenhagen, Denmark, but I've lived in China since 2005. And I have a consultancy called Nordic Management Consulting in Shanghai, also known as China Direct Biz, where we support mainly Scandinavian companies doing business in China. And in my presentation, I'm just going to briefly go through China's healthcare market, cover some topics, and at the end, I'll try also just to mention a few words specifically about the medical device market. Now, when it comes to the development of the Chinese healthcare market, it's obviously very much tied to these major demographic changes that have taken place in China over the last 2 decades. And this is very much driven by growing prosperity, increasing urbanization, and a rapidly aging population, which is again leading to a rising number of chronic diseases. And in the following,
sorry, no, it's not changing for us. The presentation is still on the first. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe if you close it down and reopen it,
I will try. I apologize. Otherwise,
okay. Yeah, now we see the China's healthcare market demographic changes.
yeah, but I'll just keep it in this instead of full screen. I'll try again. Okay, so demographic changes, and then just give you some key numbers. And again, just comparing the last decade. So if you look at China's GDP, it's actually per person, it's actually doubled in the period. It's still 1/5 of the Nordic countries. If you look at the urbanization rate, it's grown from 50% to 65% and expected to reach 70% by 2030. I should say in Sweden, the similar number is 88%. And if we look at the population, actually it's been quite stagnant in the last decade, and it's expected that India will actually overtake China this year. And if we then look at the population of 65 years or older, again, also quite dramatic change. So back in 2012, the number stood at 123 million people, or 9% of the total population. And this has then grown to 200 million, or 14.2% of the total population. But I should say again, if we look at Sweden, the same number is actually 20.25%. So China is aging rapidly, but still not similar to what we see in the Nordic countries yet. And this is, of course, very much tied to China's rapidly declining birth rate, especially if you look at the numbers for the last 2 years. So back in 2019, China recorded 14.7 million births, equal to 10.2 per 1,000 people. And in 21, that dropped to only 10.6 million births, or 7.5 per 1,000 people. And these numbers are actually equivalent to what you see in Japan and South Korea. So this is really one of the main problems. And this is really despite the fact that China on the 1st of January 2016 introduced a 2-child policy, and then in August last year introduced a 3-child policy. So at the moment, we don't really see any effect of it, and it'll be very interesting to see what's going to happen further on. And if we look at healthcare spending, basically China is threefold. So you have on one side the government spending through taxes and investment. Then you also have what's called the National Basic Medical Insurance Schemes, and there are 2 types, one for employees and one for urban rural residents. And then many might also take private health insurance. And then finally, you have the private out-of-pocket payments, where people still need to pay a certain amount or percentage to get the right treatment and the medicines. If we look at the total spending in the Chinese healthcare system, in 2020, it totaled 7.2 trillion RMB. These astronomical numbers equal to 7.1% of China's GDP. And this number is then...
It's still not changing, though. We're still at the China's healthcare market. But if you, I don't know what you did that worked. Maybe you need to do it more manually in the presentation and not use the arrows.
I don't know if you see the whole presentation slide here.
Yeah, we see it. We see your
Okay.
marker as well, but it's still China healthcare market. Okay, now it's healthcare spending.
Okay, yeah, I apologize for the technical problems, but again, if you just look at the healthcare spending, actually China is spending 7.2 trillion, equal to 7.1% of its GDP, and this amount is expected to reach 17 trillion, so more than a doubling over the next decade. And if we compare that to the Nordic countries, Sweden is actually spending 11.4% of its GDP. But more significantly, if we look at the healthcare spending per capita, it's relatively low in China, only around $800 compared to around 5,800 in Sweden. And then you have the United States at 11,000. If we then look at healthcare coverage,
yes,
then obviously getting universal health coverage has really been high on the Chinese government's agenda. So already back in 2009, the government released a document called Opinions on Deepening Health System Reform. And the idea was really to make the Chinese healthcare system more accessible, fair, and affordable. And not surprisingly, in 2020, China then announced that they had reached near universal health coverage, with over 95% of the population covered by these two state medical insurance schemes. And this is actually very much in line with the UN Social Development Goal 3.8, that talks about universal health care towards 2030. And the impact of this has been, of course, on the private out-of-pocket expenses. So back in 2001, it was around 2/3. In 2019, it was 1/3, and it's expected to reach 1/4 by 2030, but still relatively high compared to the Nordic countries, and in this case, Sweden, where it's at 13.9% this year. And then to really support this effort, then on October 25, 2016, China then issued this Healthy China 2030 blueprint. And the idea was really to improve the national healthcare services and financial coverage. And in July of 2019, they then published this detailed guideline and action plan with 15 special campaigns where they are specifically trying to measure, you can say, the improvement of the general health of the Chinese population. What is also quite interesting is that in the Healthy China 2030 plan, they also talk for the first time about internet-based health services. And that actually led to, in April 2018, that the Chinese government issued what they called the Internet Plus Healthcare Guideline. And the aim was really to alleviate, or the aim is still to alleviate, the problem of an uneven distribution of medical resources, and also reduce the pressure. Okay, it's not moving. Okay, I apologize. I seem to be speaking. Will you please let me know what?
Yeah, we can hear you, and we see
what?
Internet Plus Healthcare slide.
Yes, do you see that? Okay, and now I just changed to.
Yeah.
14 5-year plan.
Yep.
Okay, and then again, to really support again the effort that Chinese government is doing in the Chinese healthcare market, then the whole healthcare system is a high priority. So in the latest 14th 5-year plan that was approved in March of last year, they have a whole chapter dedicated to the Chinese healthcare system called Comprehensively Promote the Construction of a Healthy China. And it consists of 6 sections. And what is quite interesting is that you have a section 2 called Deepen the Reform of the Healthcare System, where they specifically state, I'll just read it here, we will accelerate the review and approval of drugs and medical devices for urgent clinical needs and rare diseases. And this is, of course, very much in line with what Peter Butzma just went through about these special fast-track approval procedures that Hainan has in relation to medicine and medical devices. And then finally, again, why is the Chinese market so important? Well, in terms of medical devices, it has a 20% global share. The value is 800 billion RMB, or 120 billion US dollars, and it's basically been growing annually by 20% since 2015. The biggest exporters, or you could say China imported worth 45 billion. They are from US, Germany, Japan, Mexico, and Singapore. I've not been able to find specific numbers in Sweden, but if you look at the UN Comtrade database, they have a category called optical, photo, technical, and medical apparatus, which was around 300 million US dollars in 2021. And obviously this number does not include the manufacturing and sales that's going on in China by Swedish companies. So this was, again, my quick presentation. Apologize for the technical difficulties. And again, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to check our website and send us an email. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Noam. That's really interesting to give the overall picture. And yeah, sorry everyone that it was a little bit out of order, but now we got to hear first about Hainan, then China, and now we're back to Hainan with Peter Ölby. So Peter, I will show your slide. If you stop sharing, Noam, I will see if I remember how to do this now that okay, there it is. After summer vacation, and I have it somewhere. Why can't I find it?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Good. I thought that maybe I could just start my introduction while you are doing the technical things, and hopefully,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Because I have a little less than 5 minutes to tell you how to enter the Chinese market.
No, but you take a little bit more time, otherwise we will not.
Carefully. First of all, I would like to say thank you and welcome to the introduction about the Nordic Life Science platform. Nordic companies, is our experience, can be extremely frustrated by entering the Chinese market due to the NMPA regulation, which actually differs very much from the known FDA and the CE and other international standardizations. And in combination with IPR, the sizing of the market, complicated distribution, price pressure from local manufacturers, we have decided half a year ago to establish a platform which focuses on the Nordic life science and the medtech industry. So the platform focuses mainly on Boao Lecheng, but of course you need to see Boao Lecheng as a stepstone to the mainland market. I will get back to how this works. The Nordic Life Science platform is a platform that is established by different companies, all with a very long background in doing business in China. But at present, we are also slowly starting cooperation with the Danish Life Science Organization and different ministries. So I just need to know, are the presentation okay, Anna?
I think I have it open. I don't know if everyone else sees it. It looks like that from my computer. Can you not see it?
I see
Yes,
that.
I see it.
Okay.
Why did we establish the Nordic Science platform?
Okay.
Yep. So then should I change slides?
Good. I have just mentioned here a few things that should be taken into consideration. First of all, we focus on helping Nordic SMEs. And we do that because we have been working with SMEs for more than 20 years. We know the pitfalls, we know the sizing difficulties, resources, and this. So having a Boao Lecheng entry is extremely interesting because it's a very small and very geographical market which is only focusing on the life science. So you could look at it as you can say dip the toes in the big Chinese ocean and start to learn from that area and take these experiences plus all the benefits you have from entering into Boao into your considerations when doing the mainland China strategy. I think there's a few things which is interesting to mention here. First of all, we see a lot of interest and also local innovation going on in vaccination and medical equipment related to go back a little bit, Anna.
Okay,
sorry.
fine.
Yeah. And that is, of course, due to all the COVID-19. But we see a lot of interest in that. Intelligent medical devices, we talked about that earlier. There's a huge demand and interest for remote monitoring patient solutions, software, IE solution in order to reduce the time for people being hospitalized. But especially we see a huge interest in also the rehabilitation market. It has been a market that has been neglected from the Chinese side for many years. And now with a growing older population, there is a huge demand for this kind of services. If you go on to the next, Anna, thank you. So you can say what we are offering in the platform is a step-by-step towards the fast entry model that also Peter Busmar was talking about. We have divided it into different phases. And what is important to say here is that each phase can be ended depending on company decision or maybe also the decision that is received from the market. But if you look at it from a company perspective, it should be an ideal way of starting up because first of all, you do not have to invest in setting up activities in mainland China in Shanghai, but you have an opportunity here to do what we call a clarification, or somebody will probably call it a feasibility. But what we are doing here is basically that we are having conversation, more detailed talks with the companies. We are trying to clarify what are the products, what is the software, what is the reasons for going to China. We understand the current situation in China related to the product. So what we are doing is that we are compiling a small pitch presentation that we are handing over to the local Hainan health authorities, which will look into that. And based on that, they will come back with, you can say, an interest or no, sorry. And this interest is very much linked up to what Peter Busmar was talking about earlier. If the product has a FDA or a CE or a Japanese license and is not currently registered on the mainland market, and one of the hospitals in Boao Lecheng has shown an interest, then there is a possibility to move on to the next step, which is a more formal inquiry, where we are going more into details about the solution, the product. We are having talks with the local hospitals in order for them to understand more deeply what is this solution about. Then, if we are still in a position where the hospitals in Boao are saying that they are interested in using this specific product, then we are actually, you can say, moving into the matchmaking, which is again trying to locate the legal agent who is doing the legal work. We are trying to find a distributor, and we are assisting the Nordic companies in the more juridical matters in relation to setting up in Boao. When all this is done, you're actually entering into the fast track market, which Peter Busmar was talking about. And that means that if you have gone through phase 1, 2, and 3, you'll actually have a client in Boao, which is the hospitals, that has, you can say, approved the interest and also the need for using your product. After the fast track entry and the approval, you are in a position where you can start to sell products in Hainan, in Boao Lecheng zone. But you are also now in a position where you are able to market your product solution on the mainland market, which means you can start to build up experience, you can start to investigate the markets, you can start to build network with local key opinion leaders. But you can also use the experience and the data that you are receiving from Boao in order to do the mainland, the national medical product approval, which should then be a faster process than if you have started directly on mainland China. So what you can say here is that you have a possibility to enter the Boao Lecheng zone with a small clarification process. If there is a local interest, you can move on and hopefully set up some kind of sales in the zone within a period of I would say 2 to 3 months, depending much about the speed from your side, but also depending much about the documentation and the fast track entry approval process locally. So when you are situated in Hainan, we are of course also assisting you on the market and the mainland market research, which you should use in order to have you can say a good foundation and a good solid market research in order to take the right strategic moves from Hainan to mainland China. I think you can skip some of them because here we have done a more detailed description on the different packages, but of course we can send that to you afterwards so you can look into that. I think you just move on, go down. Yes. Here, I want to shortly say a small example on the real-world data entry model. There was a situation where we had a partner to us had a client wanted to enter the Boao. There was done a feasibility study within 2 to 3 weeks. There was approval by the Hainan Health Commission and the local authorities. The approval for the drug took only 4 to 6 weeks, which meant that within 2 months, 3 months, the company actually had commercial sales in Boao. There was already a marketing strategy locally, but also a marketing strategy on mainland China. The local distribution was already set up, and as Peter Bosmar said, people from mainland China, they are able to travel to Boao in order to receive medical treatment, and is of course also able to bring for personal use medical treatment back home. So after that, they started to do the NMPA approval, and this approval was done, I think it took 18 months in total from feasibility study until NMPA regulatory approval was done, which is an extremely fast track way of getting from European market to Boao and to mainland China. So I think you now have an understanding on the possibilities looking at Boao as a stepstone to the Chinese market. What is important to notice here that it is a very concentrated area, and of course there is also a limited market. You only have the hospitals which is in the zone, and of course that can maybe not justify a complete setup, but you have to look at it as a stepstone towards the mainland market. You are already entering, as Pete also said, into a well-established network locally, which will guide you through the different approval processes, speaking with the medical experts. But one thing which is also entering here is that we have entered into different relations with local Chinese venture capital funds, interesting in bringing equity into companies in order to boost the possibilities on the Chinese market. And that is normally done via a joint venture and sales rights located in the joint venture. But it will provide you with the financial strength to conquer the, you can say, the time it takes to set up in China. Also, what is important is especially for the small and medium-sized companies, is that knowing your cost. Our packages are mostly done on a fixed price situation. which means that you will know your cost and you will have a budget, and after each phase you will be able to say yes or no in order to continue. So I want to end this, so we have a few questions, time for questions, by welcoming you to the Nordic Life Science platform, and hopefully you will find that Boao could be an interesting place for your Chinese venture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Yeah, this is quite interesting. It seems like it's actually a fast track to, well, first into Hainan and then into the rest of China. So that's great. Now I will stop sharing, and so are there any questions? We have a few minutes. Any questions from the audience? Well, maybe I can start, because I wanted to know who are the patients, the people that come to the different hospitals from mainland China. What is it? Mostly the wealthy that have the possibility to go there, or is it a mix of people? And are they from any special regions mostly? Do you know? Does any of you know?
Yeah, maybe I should say a few words about this. Yeah, in general, it's middle class population, and also, of course, rich population. For example, I mentioned the Boao Yiling Life Care Center. People who are members of this are in general well-to-do people, because it's not really cheap. I don't know exactly the amounts, but you cannot afford it if you have a very basic salary. And also the thing of finding your way to Boao Lecheng, if you live in a rural area and you have ever heard about it. I mean, how do you book a ticket? How do you get to Lecheng? How do you find the right doctor? And but now you see quite a few smaller companies, quite often 1 or 2 person companies, who arrange for patients everything, and quite often are former employees of a hospital in Boao Lecheng, who still has very good connections. And I know 1 or 2 of them who, for example, for Hainan people, they take care of the patients. They make sure that they have the appointments with the right doctors. They sit in the appointment so that the patient can also ask the right questions and explain to the patient what the doctor is saying. And in addition to that, they also arrange for, let's say, touristic programs, so that they have also some other things, and not because you don't sit 24/7 in the doctor's office. So yeah, but in general, let's say people from Hainan can be any people, but if they come from Chinese mainland, is mostly well-to-do people.
And then I guess it's mostly for more complicated illnesses. You wouldn't go if you had a, well, broke a leg, whatever.
Now, maybe I have to nuance this a little bit, because you would think only people with advanced stages of cancer or have, want to have access to this newest drugs. But in general, Chinese people are also very interested in health checkups. I mean, in most insurances, it's included that you can do an annual checkup with at a hospital, and so that part of the packages which are being offered is also quite popular. So they do all of tests and blood work and urine work and lung tests, blood pressure, whatever, and so that is a part. And the other thing is also cosmetology. So to do cosmetic operations, nose, breasts, face, and those kind of things.
Okay. Great. No questions at all from the audience? Or we would be happy to have some questions. Maybe you can just mention a few words before we end. I mean, is it possible at all to set up a business in China these days with, well, there's an unstable political situation globally and a little bit in China as well. There has been some economic, well, not problems, but it doesn't look as great as it did a few years ago in China. would you say it's still something? Is it worthwhile to try to enter the Chinese market?
Maybe
Well,
I should
yeah,
start,
please
and then Peter, you can, let's say, do your part. I think in general it's still possible. I mean, China was always a bit of a complicated market to start business. In principle, it's still possible, and of course, Chinese mainland is a huge market. So if you have a successful product, then it is certainly very worthwhile. Whether to go through the trouble, I think it's up to companies themselves. But nowadays, I think you always need a local partner to do business in China. And as I said, for the major international companies, they are well established there. But if you're not established yet, I think you need a local company who takes you by the hand. But also, it's not easy to travel to. It's still not easy to travel to China. Who does the work for you? So then, I think I'll stop here, and then I guess that Peter Olby wants to mention a few things about it too.
Yeah, I just want to add that, of course, it's as an investor into a new market, of course, it's important that you take into consideration all this political risk and ethical things that could, let's say, not correspond to the company's CSR and other things. But firstly, I would like to say that China is by far the second largest market for medical devices and so on in the world, and it is a rapidly growing market. It's also extremely complicated, so it's very much about not only the company having, you can say, an idea, but it is a really a full-hearted strategy and willingness to start up China. I think what is interesting for now is that we are present in China today with office. We are able to travel most of the time. So I would think that doing the preparatory work, the feasibility study or the clarification or whatever, could be an interesting thing in order for you to be ready on a China strategy.
Okay, thank you. So that's well, it looks like it's still a good opportunity, and there are a lot of things you can do before starting off in China to prepare, and maybe, well, we hope that the travel restrictions can be lifted sometime soon. So thank you very much for joining us today. We will have the recording posted to our YouTube site, where you can also find the other webinars and also the ones from last year. We had 3 China webinars last year as well. So with that, I'd like to thank Noam and Peter very much for joining us and sharing their knowledge, and for everyone else that have joined us and listened in.